Whatever your age, your gender, your culture, your language, your religion, universally, around the world, we all are united in seeking two things: peace and happiness for ourselves and those we care for. Very often, we are certain this can be attained from the outside. I go to a quiet place out into nature. That's where I can find peace. Or I receive a gift, something I deeply desire, and there's happiness. This method of pursuing peace and happiness, will always be temporary. I have to leave the quiet place, return from that natural setting. And the things I acquire don't seem to last, or I just want more. Opening to a different method, a different way. Peace and happiness inside. Independent of what is or is not going on around me. Something I carry inside. Peace is our true nature. As spiritual beings, as souls, as eternal beings, our true nature is peace, to be free, the freedom that comes from letting go. I am eternal, and in this physical realm, everything around me is temporal, can never really be mine. To attach, to hold on, to control is actually bondage, illusion. Truth is detachment, letting go. And that brings peace, protects my true nature. If I can hold this inner peace as I think and speak, act and interact, if I am completely myself as I come into expression, that harmony creates happiness. Holding that inner freedom, that inner truth in day-to-day life keeps me light, contented, happy. It's that simple. And it all happens within the self. It's in each of our own hands, that peace and happiness. Om Shanti. I am a peaceful soul.
Shanti, and welcome to Interview with the Raj Yogi. And tonight's session is What is Happiness? And so I was reflecting a lot today in terms of spiritual freedom, the relationship between what that looks like in day to day life. And so perhaps maybe just to just explore a bit of the topic that you had shared a bit about peace. Is there a relationship between peace and happiness with respect to Raja Yoga and spirituality?
Om Shanti. So, not to horrify our listeners in terms of the strict definition of peace that we use, but to give context. So, of course, Raj Yoga identifies or reminds us that we are spiritual beings and that we're wearing this physical costume with its physical image, etc. And really, the essence of all the sorrow is that we have forgotten that. So, this idea of restoring that spiritual identity that I, the soul, am separate from this body, and that I actually can exist without the body. Of course, it's a beautiful partnership. I need the body to express, to be aware, and the body definitely needs me to be living. But this idea, like an actor in a costume, that I exist outside the costume. So true peace is actually that costumeless state where I have no attachments to anything temporal whatsoever. Being able to hold that experience as I come back into the costume. So you could call it spiritual integrity. As I come back into the costume, bring that peace into action. This we call happiness or liberation in life. So, first, reconnecting with the self, my true personality, nature, and then being able to hold that. I really think of happiness or liberation in day to day life as spiritual integrity.
It's interesting you use the word integrity because the word integration has been a lot just in my awareness today with respect to this topic. And I was having a conversation with someone, another student earlier today, about what is integration and how is it relevant in terms of what sometimes we have these ideas that, I can only be spiritual when this happens. I can only have happiness when this happens. I can have peace when this happens. As you mentioned, that we're learning to have an experience of myself and then being able to bring it into action. What do I do with the resistance that comes up inside to stay real?
We've invested so much, in that persona, that image, the costume, the physical, and these approaches to peace and happiness that's based on the external, the physical. We've invested a lot and we've become very attached and really addicted. So obviously, there's going to be, if you will, withdrawal symptoms or resistance. And I think the number one thing to be aware, not going in naive, is to be aware that that's going to be there. There's going to be resistance, and even to know what the voice of that resistance is in my head. So, just understanding awareness is worth a lot. It might still come, it might push buttons, but now I'm aware. That's sort of step one. If I continue with the program, even while all of that is still going on, I'm going to start to accumulate spiritual power to be able to respond differently through each phase of change to the resistance. So I'll just keep seeing that the resistance has less effect on me. But I think the first step is to be aware that it's going to be there and what does it look like in my own head.
And you mentioned about awareness, at least so that we don't have other ideas. How does that play a role in terms of integration? in terms of the context that I'm aiming for to have this complete uh, shift in my paradigm that it integrates into my day-to-day life. In terms of some of the old ideas that we have that we reject, we suppressed, can you share more about how awareness helps them in terms of integrating?
There's different ways that we could use the awareness. I've always liked the idea of attention or observing. So when we are seated, and I always think of this in the way physical fitness happens too, when we are seated in reflection and meditation, which is a bit artificial, but it's allowing me that space to be able to experience my spiritual nature, to experience that spiritual integrity. And the idea being that I would be able then to hold or know what it feels like, and with attention, integrate that into my day to day life. That's the theory of it all. Easier said than done, because again, the moment that we start to act, the old habits kick in. So it requires an incredible amount of patience. But I have to know that that's the objective, is that it doesn't stop. The meditation doesn't stop once I stand up and the music stops. It's only just begun. I always found it interesting, the memorial of Hatha Yoga, that it's quite profound, but all of these asanas, postures, that ends with shavasana and then life back to normal. But traditionally, the idea was that all of this was actually preparing me for yoga. That wasn't the yoga itself, all the postures. It was preparing me for yoga, for union, to be a master of my senses, to go beyond the body, so that I could master these different states. So when I'm in a fitness class, I could be working on core strength and do some artificial exercises. Again, we don't move through the world in a plank, but that plank is a very concentrated approach at activating the core, feeling what that feels like. The idea is that when I stand up and start to move around, the core is still active. That very often doesn't happen, but it could if I paid attention. Now, those who experience pain, if they're not paying attention, are actually in a better boat, because the pain is an immediate feedback. Oh, I forgot to pay attention. So it's not a bad thing. It can actually be a very useful thing.
Do you find in your journey of paying attention that sometimes there's tension, and does that reduce with more practice, and is there more a capacity to see things inside without reacting? Because part of the tension is suppressing, gripping in quite subtle ways.
One of the things I've always enjoyed, one of the terms used to describe yoga is a link of love. I've always enjoyed that ideally this is a path that's fueled by very non-violent energies such as understanding, patience, and love. So I was even chatting with someone today that it's so important. Why am I doing this? Like, it has to be something is very important to me, the reason I'm doing it, something I actually love. And I constantly have to keep that in front, revise that, because that love is going to help me to pay attention. But also it said, where there's love, there's no labor. It helps to ameliorate or neutralize the tension as well. I'm always surprised, when I look at these elite athletes and dancers, etc. Like, it's amazing, incredible what they're willing to go through. But you can tell that they love it. They deeply identify with the objective. And so they will go above and beyond. And it's not hardship, it's not tension, it's what they love to do. So the first step always is to identify, what is the objective here? Why am I doing this? Like, what do I want to achieve? Deep love, something very, very important, valuable, meaningful to me, and constantly keep that in front. That's going to help me to pay attention.
had shared at the beginning part of tonight's interview about just learning to have an experience of myself. And one of the things that often I hear from students, just whether they've been a long time in the study or not, is translating what I'm learning, knowledge, you could call it theory or whatever you want to call it, but it's the same across the board as actually taking into the practical. So sometimes you hear souls are just trying to hold an experience and take them to practical. And sometimes you hear souls saying, I'm having this awareness, this thought, I'm a soul. Like, how does that kind of connect to actually being in action? In both experiences, it seems like either one is just trying to capture maybe experience without actually some sense of background of understanding, because right now we can say, think about peace, think about love, think about kindness, and we could be maybe pulling things from previous experiences, but may not be the experience of being a soul. But for some others, of course, they want to have things to be accurate, but then things sort of stay very intellectual. And then that doesn't lead to this kind of integration, this happiness that we're wanting. Any thoughts of how it kind of all gels together?
I always felt, for many reasons, the first students of this organization were really fortunate when they came to it. They weren't, we would call it, not really well educated. And that was, as it turns out, a blessing. That our approach to education, and often higher education, is increasingly intellectual. So that we now have a habit of what we do with information is it stays kind of in a clever place and doesn't necessarily translate into a practical experience. Whereas for them, that was really very easy for them because that habit of intellectualizing wasn't really that well developed. They also were highly motivated because of their place in the culture, and now they were being, invited to have this stage of such dignity. So that was very appealing. Again, that love. And the nicest thing that keeps it very protected is to keep it simple. And I think that's always a good route to go. Keep it simple, really master the basics. One of the resistance or the opposition, of course, is arrogance and different things that feed arrogance, such as appearing clever and moving quickly and, comparing to others. And these are going to get you nowhere in this practice, nowhere. So keeping it very simple. We introduce the idea of soul, very simple terms, stick to the simplicity. And as I listen to the information, slow things down to allow myself to experience it as well. So it doesn't just kind of go into repeating this idea in my head or being clever and analytical with it, but really to a very, very basic, simple exercise of, can I experience that complete detachment? I'm observing the body, very, very basic, the way really a child might go at it, I think will get you very far ahead.
I was wondering then, keeping things simple, not being intellectual, I was thinking about this word love actually. And for those in a regular class this morning, there was such an emphasis on God's love in terms of happiness. Could you share about just how this part about the identity of who this being is, and what is that kind of love that is connected to having real happiness?
So it's going to sound very businesslike. God is the only soul I know who's able to blend love and business so well, because understanding that love really means there's some attainment there for me. And this is the one being who really knows what souls are longing for, what is a deep, deep attainment. It's happiness, but he even understands what is true happiness. And true happiness is being my true self. It's really that simple. So we have deep love for that soul because they offer this attainment. They really are capable of bringing me back to my true self and teaching me how to operate in that state, again, with that spiritual integrity. So knowing that's the source of my happiness, I have deep love for that being. If I can connect those dots, know what that being is allowing to emerge within me or be restored within me, then I really, and in that's the only being who can do that. So that particular attainment, so there's love for that being.
In terms of that love, why is soul consciousness so essential in terms of that love for there to be happiness?
So the being that God is restoring to its original state, it's not the body, it's me, the soul. All of the relationship is based on soul to soul. So for me to really be able to benefit from that, what that soul's bringing, to experience the happiness that comes with that particular attainment, I'm going to have to go into the experience of being a soul. This is all offered to the soul. Said God speaks to the soul, not the body. So for me to receive what's being transmitted, I'm going to have to be in that experience as well. I am a soul.
So I'll just sneak in one last question. Then how about the identity of God as a soul? Why is when we hear that word God, it's actually such a loaded term for some. So I don't even know what experience souls are having while they're listening to this. But what is that aspect of that being's identity as a soul that is really also a key ingredient in this whole study?
I think that idea alone is a relief, makes us happy because it really means he belongs to everyone. If he's not a soul, if he's a body, which body is it going to be? And we try and address that by saying, well, it's not a he, it's a her. And we're still kind of in the same boat that we're alienating someone by saying he's not a soul. But the moment we say he's a soul and we're all souls, then now a lot of walls and veils and stuff is removed for me to be able to get close to that being. A lot of conditions are removed. So it's actually a huge relief, a source of happiness that he is a soul. He's not of any particular culture, religion, other than the religion of the soul, which is peace. So it's very, we use the word inclusive, but very accessible for anyone.
Thank you, Judy. Perhaps we can have a little reflection.
It's as if there's a big reset button inside each of us, a switch. And it's very easy to activate, but it has to be real. That I am this wondrous being, a soul. Identifying with the body has actually held me back from everything I've been seeking. I am a spiritual being, eternal. And I'm meant to move through the world with freedom, complete self-sufficiency, self-mastery. That how I feel, how I respond, how I treat myself and others is not dependent on any conditions from the outside. It's unconditional, comes from within me. There is so much treasure, value, meaning packed within each of us as a spiritual being. And it's unlocked simply by remembering I am a soul and placing myself in the care of the Supreme Soul, the eternal healer. A completely healed soul is happy. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. Thank you, Sister Judy. Thank you for those online as well. I'm just looking ahead to see when the next Learn About Meditation is. Is that May 23rd? Yes, so Saturday, May 23rd, 12:15 to 1:30 at the Academy. If there are souls who want to join, we have that on the website, also on Eventbrite as well. And or reminder as well that are just because of some changes, we are only offering the online meditation experience live stream on YouTube on Sundays. And of course, we have the interview that's taking place on the Tuesdays. And also continue to have the drop-in evening meditation at the Academy on the Thursdays. The on-site, it's a bit of a chit-chat and meditation on the Mondays at the Inner Peace Center. And all of those details you can find on the website as well as Eventbrite. So thank you for joining with us. Shanti.